Hey everyone! Welcome to a journey back in time to a period that shaped the future of an entire nation. Let's travel back in time to France in the late 1700s. This was a time of grandeur and opulence, but also of deep-seated issues that were bubbling beneath the surface. Imagine a powerful kingdom, rich in culture, and admired by the world. The Palace of Versailles stood as a symbol of this wealth and splendor, showcasing the finest art, architecture, and gardens. But behind all the fancy stuff, there were serious problems. The glittering facade hid a society on the brink of collapse, with widespread poverty and suffering among the common people. French society was divided into three groups called estates. This rigid social structure played a crucial role in the growing discontent. The first estate was the clergy, super rich and powerful. They owned vast lands and collected tithes from the people, living in luxury while preaching piety. The second estate was the nobility, also super rich and didn't have to pay many taxes. They enjoyed privileges and lived in grand chateaux, often indulging in extravagant lifestyles. These two groups, even though they were small, controlled everything. They held the power, wealth, and influence, leaving the majority of the population with little to no voice. Then there was the third estate, everyone else. This group was incredibly diverse, including everyone from wealthy merchants to poor farmers. From rich merchants to poor farmers, they paid all the taxes and had no say in how things were run. They were the backbone of the economy, yet they were burdened with the heaviest financial load. This wasn't fair, and people started getting angry. The frustration and resentment grew, leading to protests and demands for change. King Louis XVI didn't seem to care. He was more interested in his own pleasures and the grandeur of his court than in the suffering of his people. He spent tons of money on fancy things and wars, making France even poorer. His extravagant spending and poor financial management only deepened the crisis, setting the stage for a revolution that would change the course of history. Life for the Third Estate was really hard. Imagine working super hard every day and barely having enough food to eat. Farmers, the most important people in France, paid heavy taxes to the king and the church, leaving them with almost nothing. Bad harvests and expensive bread made things even worse. In the cities it wasn't much better. Workers had low pay, no jobs, and expensive food. They saw how rich the nobles were while they were starving, and that made them furious. People started whispering about change, about fairness and equality. New ideas were spreading across Europe called the Enlightenment. Thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau talked about individual rights, the power of the people, and limiting the king's power. These ideas were revolutionary. They challenged how things had always been. These ideas spread through France like wildfire. Educated people in the Third Estate started questioning the king and the nobles. They dreamed of a France where the people had the power. These ideas were like seeds planted in the anger and frustration waiting to grow. By 1788, France was almost broke. The country was drowning in debt, and the treasury was empty. Years of war, extravagant spending, and poor financial management had taken their toll. King Louis XVI had spent way too much money on luxuries, palaces, and helping the American Revolution. His lavish lifestyle and poor decisions had drained the royal coffers. Desperate to solve the financial crisis, he had to call a meeting of the Estates General, a general assembly representing the three estates of the realm, the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. This was a significant event because it hadn't happened in over 170 years. The meeting was supposed to address the financial problems, but the Third Estate, representing the commoners, had other plans. They were tired of being overtaxed and underrepresented. They demanded equal representation and a voice in the government. They wanted to change the system that favored the rich and powerful. The First and Second Estates, made up of the clergy and the nobility, were not willing to share their privileges and power. They wanted to maintain the status quo and keep the Third Estate in their place. Frustrated and determined, the Third Estate took a bold step. They gathered in a nearby tennis court and took an oath, vowing not to disband until they had written a new constitution for France. They declared themselves the National Assembly, claiming to be the true representatives of the French people. This was a revolutionary act that challenged the authority of the king and the existing social order. The declaration of the National Assembly was a turning point. It ignited a spark that would soon become a flame. The storming of the Bastille followed, symbolizing the people's uprising and the start of the French Revolution. The fight for liberty, equality, and fraternity had begun. The king tried to stop the National Assembly, but the people of Paris bravely fought back. On July 14, 1789, they stormed the Bastille, a royal prison and a powerful symbol of the king's authority. The fall of the Bastille was a huge and significant victory for the revolutionaries. It clearly showed that the king was losing control over his kingdom. News of this spread rapidly throughout France, and people everywhere started rebelling against the nobles. The revolution had begun. The revolution brought big changes. The king was kicked out, and France became a republic. This was a monumental shift in the country's history, as the people of France sought to break free from centuries of monarchical rule. The storming of the Bastille became a symbol of the people's power and their desire for freedom and justice. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen gave everyone rights like liberty, equality, and fraternity. This document was a groundbreaking step towards establishing a society where all individuals were considered equal under the law. It inspired hope and a sense of unity among the citizens, who believed that a new era of fairness and justice was beginning. But things got out of control. The Reign of Terror began, a very scary time. The streets of Paris were filled with fear and uncertainty as the revolutionary government resorted to extreme measures to maintain control. The guillotine became a common sight, and the atmosphere was charged with paranoia and suspicion. Maximilien Robespierre and other radicals wanted to get rid of anyone who disagreed with them. They believed that the revolution could only succeed if all opposition was eliminated. Revolutionary tribunals were set up to try and convict those accused of being enemies of the state, often with little evidence. Thousands of people were executed. The terror brought some order, but it also created a lot of fear. Prisons were overcrowded with those awaiting trial, and the constant threat of execution loomed over everyone. The sense of dread was palpable, and the social fabric of France was deeply affected. Eventually, Robespierre was overthrown and executed too. His fall marked the end of the Reign of Terror, but the scars it left on the nation were profound. People began to question the methods and the morality of the revolution, leading to a period of reflection and re-evaluation. The Reign of Terror was a dark time in the revolution. It showed the extremes to which people could go in the name of ideology and power. The aftermath was a mix of relief and sorrow, as the nation mourned the loss of so many lives and struggled to rebuild a sense of normalcy and justice. The French Revolution was a crazy time, but it changed France and the world forever. It got rid of absolute monarchy and brought in the idea that people should rule themselves. The ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity spread all over the world, inspiring other revolutions. In France, feudalism ended, land was shared more fairly, and society became more equal. The revolution also created a strong sense of French identity. The French Revolution, with its good and bad times, shows us how powerful ideas can be and how important it is to fight for freedom and equality.